All right, everybody, welcome to the channel. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing one of my favorite mystery novels of all time, written by one of my favorite mystery novelists of all time, and that is Neon Rain by James Lee Burke. This book came out in 1987. It is the first book in James Lee Burke's Dave Robicheaux mystery series. If you want to know how to spell Robicheaux, that's how you spell it right there. And James Lee Burke. Now, this guy's always been... I've been collecting these Dave Robicheaux mystery novels ever since the 90s. And I think there's 23 in the series right now. Again, starting with Neon Rain is the number one. And I've got the whole set here. Of course, I've got the one that's just called Robicheaux. But down here, I've got the entire set right there. That's all 23 of them. In fact, a little inside scoop onto my own career as a writer is, as you can see, I go by Brian Lee Durfee, if this will stay. Anyway, Brian Lee Durfee. I was just gonna go by my first and last name, and I'm like, no, you know what? I'm gonna go by Brian Lee Durfee in honor of one of my favorite authors, James Lee Burke. That is why I did that. It's a little inside scoop. Maybe you saw my review of Private Cathedral by James Lee Burke. I mentioned the same thing. Anyway, this book, this mystery novel, is one of the early novels that I read as a young person that got me really interested in mystery novels themselves. This thing was brutal. I had never read a more brutal, just gritty, just suspenseful novel until I had picked up Neon Rain. And I was a younger guy, and so when I got to reading this stuff, which is about mobsters and drug lords and all this stuff, I had never read a book quite like it before with any of the subject matter. And so I was just a little bit in shock, but also totally jazzed because I knew I had found a new genre, because before that I just read science fiction, fantasy and stuff, and maybe a few Louis L'Amour westerns. But this book, along with a few Stephen King novels, changed the way I wanted to collect books and read books. That's how good, and I have this Neon Rain, book number one in the Dave Robicheaux series. It's still my favorite of the series. Still holds a special place in my heart. I still think it's the best novel, the most intense novel, the most brutal novel, the most interesting novel. That's not saying the others aren't good, because I love the series. I love all of the books. There's not a weak book in the group, but I recommend starting with book number one, Neon Rain, and working your way through the entire 23-book series. That way you can see our Inspector Dave Robicheaux as he goes through all of the different trials and tribulations throughout the book. And one of the things that was shocking about this book, it opens up in a prison where Dave Robicheaux goes to visit an inmate who's on death row, and an inmate that Dave Robicheaux knows from the past. And the inmate says, hey, listen, word in the prison is there's going to be a hit on you, Inspector Robicheaux, Lieutenant Robicheaux, because there's people out there that don't like you. And so we've heard in the prison that somewhere out there, keep in mind, there's going to be a hit. And that's all the information he's really given. And then he's just like, well, I don't know whether to believe it or not. But then one of the shocking things about this book is right there at the beginning, you think that Robicheaux dies. I mean, you think that he just, because he goes through an experience that is absolutely terrifying. And you're like, there's no way a guy can survive that. No way. Absolutely no way a guy can survive that. Anyway, that's the setup of the story. Now, like I said, I've read this a bunch of times. I just did a quick reread of it last night for this review. And I am going to read, I really enjoyed the inside cover. And the quote that and the description they give of the book here, because it does the book more justice than I could do just off the top of my head. So let's read through this real quick. James Lee Burke's The Neon Rain begins with a New Orleans, by the way, that takes place in New Orleans, which is another cool thing. I try to read mystery series that are set in different parts of the world, like New Orleans, Alaska, New Hampshire. You know, all the mystery series in they're all set in different parts of the world, so I can learn. Well, in this one, we're learning about the Bayou, about Louisiana, about New Iberia. Anyway, The Neon Rain begins with a New Orleans detective visiting a professional killer in the Angola State Penitentiary hours before his execution. He wants to tell the detective of a jailhouse rumor. There is a contract out on the detective's life. Dave Robicheaux is the name of the homicide cop, a Vietnam vet, an outdoorsman, a racetrack and jazz buff, and also a recovering alcoholic. His search for this potential hitman takes increasingly strange and unexpected turns. Deadly turns. I mean, this book, imagine the most brutal mystery series you've ever seen on TV and times it by 10. I mean, it's hard. It's hard-hitting stuff. So, unexpected twists in his search for his hitman. It sets him. He's in a ring of drug dealers, mafia chieftains, an ex-army general with the shady dealings in Central America. You know, it mentions here he's left for dead, drugged, pumped with alcohol. You know, he wakes up in a hospital trying to figure. I mean, this is in the description, so I mean, he's left for dead pretty early on in the story, and I'm telling you, it's a harrowing scene, a harrowing scene. But anyway, tough, violent, but often surprisingly lyrical, The Neon Rain is a novel that leads the reader through a maze of intrigue and treachery in blind alleys that can only end in sudden death. They wrote it a lot better than I read it. I read that like an idiot, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out to James Lee Burke and The Neon Rain, because it's one of my top 5 favorite mystery novels of all time, and I keep rereading it, and I'm going to start rereading the rest of the series, which is down here. 23 books. We're going to be leaving reviews for all of them, because these things are literary fiction. If you ask any other great mystery writer who his favorite mystery novelist is, James Lee Burke always comes up. Everybody, from George Pelecanos to Dennis Lehane to Michael Connolly to everybody that writes great mysteries, whenever they're asked in an interview, who's your favorite mystery writer, they all say James Lee Burke. His dialogue, his writing, it's lyrical, it's poetic. It's like you're reading a piece of grim literary fiction every time. I mean, I guess the best I could describe it as is like the True Detective series that HBO keeps putting out. That's the tone we're getting with James Lee Burke. 10 out of 10. The Neon Rain, like I said, one of my favorite mystery novels of all time. The beginning of the Dave Robicheaux mystery novel series set in New Orleans.